Hey, Mike Finney here. I'm going to try to put down on video my current understanding of rate of closure so I can better understand it myself. And with the help of Stephen Nesbitt and his great papers that he's written on the golf swing, he described three major torques in the golf swing. The first one is alpha, where the flexion extension of the wrists, you can maybe call it an in-plane, in the functional swing plane movement of the club, where the club can obviously open and close because of their movements. Another one, known as beta torque, is the club pitching this way, hands go in, the club pitches this way. That is also closing the club face in relation to the target. So that's beta torque. And then a third is gamma torque, which is the turning of the club face around its long axis. So all three of those torques contribute to the club face closing in some way during the downswing, simultaneously, sequentially, usually all together in a mismatch of stuff. The hands coming in, you get a little beta, and you arch your left wrist, you get a little bit of gamma, and obviously if you straighten your right wrist, you get a little alpha. Here's where the confusion, I think, is setting in on all of our understanding of what rate of closure is. If you don't have any beta and you don't have any alpha and you just close the club face with gamma, then your gamma reading, which Enzo is reading, they'll put a marker here or somewhere on the head to see what this club is doing around the long axis of the shaft. Your gamma reading is going to be really high. So if you're just looking at the gamma torque rate of closure measurement and you froze out the beta and the alpha, it's going to look like you have a high rate of closure with regard to the gamma. Obviously, if you don't have any gamma and you have very little beta, you're going to have to use a lot of alpha to square the club up. So you'd have a high alpha rate of closure reading. So for that reason, somebody who might look like they swing, on a face-on video like this, where they're throwing the club at the ball, they might have an obviously high alpha closing rate of closure, but at the same time, if they do this, they don't want to add any gamma because they'd hit it off the map to the left. So if they have a lot of alpha and they have a lot of gamma, the ball's going to go dead left. So what they do is they maintain their alpha and they reduce their gamma to hit it straight. So they'll have a low rate of closure reading with regard to the long axis twisting, but a high rate of closure with regard to alpha closing. Now that I say this, it sounds so doggone easy to understand, but I'd never had it right in my head until a few days ago in Orlando after talking to guys like Paul Wood, Alan Hocknell at Callaway, Paul Woods at Ping, and then Sasha McKenzie, Chris Como, Phil Cheatham, Rob Neal, etc., etc., etc. It takes a while to kind of grasp this concept, but once you do, it's like, how did I not have this figured out before? Now, I may be totally off base. Talking to Paul Wood, he said during his talk at the Top 100 Summit, he used mixes of all three rate of closure readings and just the gamma only reading. So I'll have to go back and try to see what he actually said in that presentation. I wasn't there, but he said he was going to send me a copy of his slides so I could take a look at it. So anyway, remember there's alpha closing, there is beta closing, and then there's gamma closing. And I think what might be causing some of the arguments is that Enzo's reading all three, and all three together and all three individually. So I think some of the arguments that are being had are maybe gamma only, this twisting only versus the alpha look, and vice versa. So if you kind of separate, you resolve the closing out into those three components, then maybe this will make some better sense to you like it's doing for me. And the other thing is, and this is kind of beside that point that I just made, is that the rate of closure understanding is in its infancy. There's a lot of smart people taking a look at this, and initially the findings are, yeah, if you have if you have a low gamma rate of closure, you're going to reduce your dispersion. And if you have a high gamma rate of closure, you're going to increase your dispersion. That might be the case, but we don't know for sure. So really, it's very early on with all of these researchers. I know Sasha McKenzie's looking at it very closely, and his initial thoughts are that, you know, it might not have a whole heck of a lot of significance to the individual golfer. And the other thing is, how much can you change this in the individual golfer? How much is a simple grip change going to change how much alpha or how much gamma or I guess how much beta you can have too? I mean, all of those things are remaining to be seen. I know Paul Wood and his assistant Eric, and I'm not too sure of Eric's last name, they're looking into this, you know, more from a club design perspective as opposed to a teaching perspective, but they're looking into it, and it'd be nice to kind of wait for these guys to come out with their numbers, make sure we're talking about the same things before we leap to any conclusions, which a lot of conclusions have already been leapt to, and that's caused a lot of the argument. So I hope this maybe helps in some way with your understanding. I know it's going to help me when I look at it to try to understand what in fact is closing the club face and the rates of those closings. And that's another thing before I get off. You know, the rate of closure may have its own kinematic sequence. You know, how much of this you do early, how much of this you do early, how much of this you do early, transition or halfway down, and then all the way at the ball. So that's going to be another thing, how much they ramp up, ramp down during the swing. And then obviously club head speed, which Chris Como and Dr. Kwan are smartly going to take club head speed out of the equation and just go over a closure rate over a distance, so per displacement, I think they're going to call it. So that'll wash out how fast you're swinging the golf club. But it's a fascinating subject. I know it probably doesn't hit home for 95% of the golf teachers out there, but for those that are interested, I think it's kind of neat to look into. Thanks a lot, and I hope this helps a little bit.